Hello, guys, and welcome to the Royalty Royal Show. And today we are going to talk about school. I feel like our school, especially the system in Kenya, is more of a legal prison. I don't know. Let's talk about it. And you can tell me what you think about it as a legal prison because we have some facts here, right? So, you ever noticed how the Kenyan school system feels like a place of learning and um not more like less like a place of learning and more like a prison, a legal prison. You wake up at 5 a.m., especially the boarding schools. And not even the boarding schools, including the day schools. Wear the same uniform, march in silence, follow orders, and if you dare question authority, you're punished. You know, that's not freedom, that's control. And it's toxic. Especially, you need to look at it like this. If you have ever been in a toxic relationship, you can try to join, control. And, you know, yeah, someone trying to control you, they will make you fear. Anyway, from the moment we step into school, we are trained to obey, not to think. Bells tell us when to move, teachers tell us what to think, and prefects, little mini guards like patrols, We are told that discipline equals success, but what if it's just obedience dressed up as education? And we'll talk about obedience later. I feel like we are taught to obey. We are taught to obey laws, and this goes deeper because if you look at what we are told to obey, you know, we are taught to obey in terms of if we go outside there, if we are like Africa as a whole. Okay, let me go there. Africa as a whole right now is going through neocolonialism period. Okay, and what we understand by now, if you still think we are independent, you need to wake up. We are still being controlled by the West, by the British. Okay, and I feel like this Kenyan, something like Africa was meant to be after they sat down the way they sit down in the West and in their British areas. They sat down and they were like, okay, we need workers. Because now them they call themselves the developed countries as we are the third world countries. And now in their little meetings or big meetings, whichever, they sat down and they realized that they need what is it called? They need workers for their big, whatevers. They also need dumping areas. I mean, that's my opinion from what I see. And you can choose to agree or disagree. I'm sorry about the background noise. Um, they chose Africa to be a dumping ground for the like. Where are most second hand items brought to? Africa. Hmm? Below standard products, where are they brought to? Africa. These big brands, I know Kenya and Africa as a whole, there are people who buy big brands, but let's look at the percentage. I think it's a very small percentage that can afford the brands, you know that can afford to have 10 pairs of $600 shoes. That's like cheap to someone else in the developed countries, but is very expensive here in Kenya or Africa, especially when it comes to our below average salaries or incomes. Okay. So when I talk about obedience in schools, it's like these people, when I talk about these people, it's general for the West and the British because they still control our trades, our farms, our crops, and they also control our education because you can't tell me that let me not go there. We are they when they sat down and they realized we need workers, they needed to set up a system like a school system where they can come and teach their workers how to do, what to do, how to do it. And these workers are so pressed to an extent that if they go and find challenges here, they can be versatile. There is that versatility. And I feel like if you go to training camps, the ones for the soldiers, you'll see how rigid they versatile they are because of the different environments they will encounter. Okay, so I feel like these education systems for Africans, for the African schools and for the yeah, Kenyan school and African schools are meant to be like this. Hmm? So we are being taught obedience in school, obedience for our in quotes masters. Hmm? And if you can look at the trend right now, you'll be shocked because right now a lot of kids are graduating. We actually have the smartest kids in the world. Yes, some of the smartest kids in the world, and I know that we can do things. And you may tend to disagree with me, but look at this. Why is our education system based on things like in China? Like we are taught about history, not Chinese, sorry, British history. We are taught about some stuff that does not make sense about Hitler or Gandhi, or all this history that does not make sense. Hmm? Why are we being taught things that don't help our society? I wish that our education system would help us solve issues in our society. I know some of the things that we do in campus help us solve directly, but I feel like we need more. Yeah, okay. So another thing that I would say make our education system so much like a prison is the uniforms. They're not just clothes. I need you to understand that image is key, image is power, how you package yourself. And I feel like when the West package themselves in a certain way as superior, and they choose to package Africans, and I don't want to blame them because we also need to take charge as Africans. We need to check because if two people can say that Africa is inferior, and we 5,000 other people Africans will be like, okay, yeah, and your Africa is inferior. That doesn't make sense. But if those two people say, okay, Africa is inferior, and these 5,000 disagree with this person, I think we can move forward as superior. And it's okay, it's superior to none, but at least we are not like as bad as people tend to look down on us. Like, I don't know if I make sense. So uniforms aren't just clothes, and that's why I say image is important, but they symbolize something. They strip away our identity, our individuality, and creativity. Mm. In school, you're not John or Amina, you are student number. Do you remember your student number? I think I do. Was it 24 that I can't even remember anyway? You can't choose your hairstyle, your clothes, sometimes not even your words, because your words, hey, isn't that the same psychological conditioning prisons use to make everyone feel the same, think the same, and be the same? You're conditioned. If you have learned psychology, I think you've learned about a very it's this conditioning of dogs on when to eat. I think you should go and research on that. It's something general, but it's really it's bad. This conditioning, obedience. You see, um, many schools still use fear as a teaching tool. There's fear of failure, fear of punishment, fear of shame. How do you learn freely in a system built on fear? Fear doesn't educate, it controls. Again, toxic relationships are run through fear, and they are meant to control their victims. And when students finally leave schools, they've learned to stay quiet, follow orders, and suppress creativity. Hmm? So what I'd say is, if you when you're conditioned through fear and you're made to obey, You're even made to fear your thoughts, because if you speak out, you'll be punished. I mean, you know, if you have gone through high school or whatever, you know the kinds of punishments kids are meant to do. I don't know, dig a hole, go what is it called, kukata kuni, I don't know, do what in the dark, kneel for hours, walk on hot sand barefoot. A lot of things happen, and I feel like it's like a prison, it's like a camp where you're taken to be taught how to obey those people. And our black people, our black countrymen are the ones who are actually pushing this. So teachers, if you listen to this, think of what you're doing to our kids. Hmm? Maybe it's time we stop calling this education and start calling it what it really is: conditioning. Okay? Kenya doesn't need obedient students, it needs thinkers, creators, innovators. So if the school system feels like a prison, maybe it's because it was built that way. The question is, are you ready to break free? Hmm? I have been thinking about this. I haven't even dug deep. This was just general about the school system, about how we are taught to obey, so that when we go to serve our, in quotes, masters, we don't question and we don't look beyond what we are, you know, what is delivered to us. And right now, those people out there, their countries are also failing, and it's hard to integrate these workers here in Africa to their systems, because even then they're struggling. Okay, and that's why I feel like now we have this a huge number of kids graduating from campus, and they're not getting jobs, because most of the people, I feel like most of the people, before there were no a huge number of people were illiterate, but right now at least we are getting there. We are not there yet, and I feel like that's why our school system right now is going from bad to worse, because now they're wondering, what are we going to do with this, with a huge number of educated people who we cannot employ in our countries. Mhm. And also they don't want us to be highly educated, because once we are highly educated, we can, especially a big number of people, because right now we are not there yet. But if a huge number of people are educated, then I feel like we can see through the black, for one, the black people who are against their own black men. We can see through the politicians' lies, you know. We can see through what these white people are doing. They're not all white people, the West. Let me call them the West. Okay. And I wish that people would come in hands and boycott this education system that is actually very weak. It doesn't solve a lot of our problems. I wish we had things that would solve our problem, but sasa we don't have. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for today. Comments, questions, you can ask questions, and we'll get through deeper as we go by. Bye bye.